Holy mackerel, fantastic. So today is easements, and what this is, it's just a snippet. It's a 20 or 30 minute snippet that the majority of which, or more of which, is on the Boundary Wise Academy. And this isn't intended to be a pitch for anything. This is about some free learning, some sharing, and some community building. So if you want to know more, go to boundarywise.ca in your own time and find out about that. Questions are going to be, you can put your questions in the live chat, and then we'll deal with them at the end if that's okay. Let me get through the content, and then we can deal with that at the end. And here's what we're going to cover today. So basically what we're going to go through is simply, first of all, what an easement actually is. I know I keep glancing up, right? Sorry if that's annoying. What an easement actually is, what the different kinds of easements are that are out there, why this is important to you, why are easements actually important to you as a realtor, as a real estate agent, what does this mean to you? Then we're going to get into easements on the buying side and easements on the listing side, specifically because they impact you differently depending on what side of the deal you're on. Then we're going to talk about how do you know if there's an easement on your property, and then we're going to get into where do you go to find these things out. And finally, we're going to touch on the Boundary Wise Academy very quickly. So hopefully that's what all of you are here for, I hope. So let's make a start, shall we? Everyone good? Everyone ready? Fantastic. Here we go. Okay, so what is an easement, first and foremost? Well, an easement is a legal right to use a portion of somebody else's land. A legal right to use a portion of somebody else's land. And in that definition is also another really important part, and that is that it is a non-possessory right. That means that you and I may live next to each other, any one of you, 320 people, maybe not all of you. That would be a few too many neighbors, right? But you and I may live next to each other, and you may have an easement over my land. That means you have a legal right to use that portion of land for whatever reason the easement states, but it doesn't mean that you own that piece of land. I still own the land. You just have a legal right to use it. So it's a non-possessory right to use a portion of somebody else's land. And the way that I really like to understand easements and appreciate them is to say simply this: they are the exception to the boundary law. There are literally dozens and dozens of different types of easement. But in order to get a base understanding, and when you're explaining easements to your clients, because homeowners don't know what this stuff is, right? But it does affect them. When you're explaining what an easement is to your client, maybe you explain it like this. You say, listen, the law of boundaries says that the boundary is where it is, and what I own on my side of the boundary is mine, and what you own on your side of the boundary is yours. And technically speaking, if I step over the boundary onto your property, that's trespassing. If I build something over the property line, that's an encroachment that shouldn't be there. So the law of boundaries says the boundary is where the boundary is, and I own on my side, you own on your side. An easement is a tool that is used, an instrument that's used to create an exception to that, because there are so many different situations in which maybe there's a perfectly good reason why you might need to be able to access a portion of my property. And so there had to be a measure, an ability in the law to allow the boundary law to have some exceptions built into it without completely dismantling all the boundaries that we have out there. And so that's what easements really are. They allow us to create exceptions to the very fixed rule, say, of boundaries, the law of boundaries. So, so non-possessory right and the exception to the rule. Now, what's interesting is that in any easement, there are always two sides to the easement. There always has to be at least one servient tenement, that's the party that is giving up the right. And then on the other side of things, there is the dominant tenement, the party that gains the right. So servient tenement, dominant tenement. So again, you and I live next to each other. You have an easement over a portion of my property. You are the dominant tenement because the right of the easement accrues to you. You're gaining access to my property. I, on the other hand, conversely, right, it's the other half, it's the other side of the coin that has to exist. I, on the other hand, am giving up that right to you, so I am the servient tenement. There always has to be a servient tenement and a dominant tenement in an easement. Now, there can be multiple servient tenements and multiple dominant tenements, but there always has to be at least one on each side of those in order to balance out this give and take that exists in easements. So that's the first bit. Now let's talk about the different types of easements that are out there. Now, we're not going to get into the details of every single one out there. You can go to the Boundary Wise Academy and get information and understanding on that. But what we are going to talk about is the fact that most easements are what are called appurtenant easements. They run with the land. And so it's actually a bit of a misnomer when I say to you, I live next to you and I have an easement over your property. Well, it's not me. I don't have the easement over the property. The easement is attached to my property and it runs with the land. So it is actually my property that has an easement over your property. It's an appurtenant easement that runs with the land. And the majority of easements that you're going to see in residential real estate are just that. They run with the land. Laneways, neutral driveways, those kind of things. Now, so those are appurtenant easements and they run with the land. There is another type of easement out there that's quite prevalent, and those are called easements in gross. Now, easements in gross don't run with the land. They are attached to or associated with either individuals or, most commonly, corporations. So what would an example of that be? Well, think of hydro easements, think of telco easements, think of Rogers or Bell or the telco company that is running lines or has equipment in your yard. They have an easement over your property. It would be crazy if the hydro easement was in the name of a piece of property that the hydro company owned. That doesn't make sense, does it? The easement exists for your hydro utility to be able to access their equipment on your property. So in that case, the easement is called an easement in gross, and it runs with the hydro company, a corporation. So remember, two different types of, say, ownership of easement. Easements in gross and appurtenant easements. Easement in gross, the right accrues to a corporation usually, and easements and appurtenant easements, the right accrues to land, to a piece of property. Make sense? Fairly easy, right? Okay, so that's that one. So the other type of easement I want to, or nuance in easements that I want to share with you, just this other one, is the difference between affirmative easements and negative easements. So affirmative easements give you the right to do something that you weren't able to do before. So again, you have an easement over my property for the purpose of being able to drive your car and get it all the way to the rear of your property to the garage, because the land between the boundary between our properties and your house is not wide enough. So you've got a bit of an easement over my property so you can get your vehicle all the way to the back. That would be considered an affirmative easement because it gives you the right to do something that didn't exist before, that without the easement wouldn't be there. But there are also negative easements. Negative easements are kind of interesting. Negative easements prevent you from doing something. So a good example of a negative easement, and there are a lot of these out there, are easements that are associated with air rights. And think of every single airport, helipad, if you live in a city, if you're in Ottawa or Toronto or a city where there are hospitals with helipads on them, airports, airfields, that kind of thing. Every single flight path that comes into those airports has a conical shaped flight path easement to prevent people from building up into the approach to the airports. That would be kind of dangerous, right? So those are negative easements that exist to prevent you from doing, in this case, building up into. And Stephen, you're in Guelph here. If anyone else is in Guelph, I know I've my house in the South End here. There's an easement on it. I wonder, what the heck is the easement here? It must be something serious. And I look into it. It turns out it's an air right. Well, those of you who know Guelph know that the airport's tiny and it's 20 kilometers away from my house. And I have no idea why. Maybe somebody was a little overzealous in thinking what was going to happen in Guelph in terms of this huge metropolis that was going to be built. Anyway, I have a negative easement over my house that prevents me from building up into something or other. So anyway, affirmative and negative easements. So when we talk about types of easement, the thing I really want you to remember, though, is the two main types, appurtenant and gross. Runs with land, runs with a corporation. And they're both as important as each other, as you're going to see in a minute. So now let's get into why is this important to you? What does this mean to you as a real estate professional? And it is different on either side of the deal. If you're listing, they mean one thing, and you act in a certain way. If you're on the buying side, it means something different, and you act in a certain way. So we're going to cover both, understanding, of course, that at any given day, you're on either one side or the other, depending on who you're dealing with. So, by the way, sorry, if you start hearing some really bad AC/DC going on, it's this is one of the isolation webinar things, right? My neighbor upstairs is a really bad Guitar Hero player, and he is just going at it like crazy right now. So if that starts, it's not me, it's upstairs. So, okay. So let's talk about now why easements are important to you. They affect how land is used. Fundamentally, that is what you need to be hyper aware of when it comes to understanding what the impact of easements could be on a real estate deal. That's what you need to be aware of. So how do they affect land? Well, let's talk about on the buying side first. On the buying side, the mindset of the professional realtor should be always, what is my client's intended use of land? What is my client trying to achieve with this property? Are they looking to purchase a property and build a pool? Are they looking to tear down and rebuild? Are they looking to create an investment property out there where they need the maximum amount of building square footage of land to create to have the building envelope that they need in order to be able to manifest their investment? Are they looking to build a deck or a shed? What are they trying to do with the land? Do they need the space down the side of the house in order to park their vehicles? So these are the kind of things that you need to be aware of, which I know you are aware of when you discuss these things with your client in terms of what is the use of land. Because understand that an easement can often impact how you use your land. My example of the air right easement on top of my property didn't affect my use of land. You'll find that many easements don't, but it's really important to have that understanding. So are we talking about a mutual driveway? Are we talking about a hydro easement or a laneway? Are we talking about access to the rear of the property? What are we talking about when we're talking about this easement? And how is it on the buying side going to affect my client's use of land? And we want to make sure that as we guide our clients to the kind of property that they're interested in, that we make sure that the land that we're recommending and the property we're recommending, not that it's just got the right number of rooms and the right square footage of house and it's on the right kind of street and it's got the right kind of apparent size of yard and all the rest of it, but also that the land can be used in the way that isn't going to compromise your client's enjoyment of that property and use of that property. So what kind of things does compromise look like when a client moves in and all of a sudden they find out what? Well, maybe they find out that they can't build that pool that they wanted, or they can't build that deck that they wanted, or they can't build that huge shed that they were going to put in, a workshop that they were going to put in. Maybe they wanted to add an addition. Maybe they wanted to build up. Maybe they wanted to widen the driveway or rebuild the garage. All of these things can be affected by easements that you on the buying side have not detected. Now, you might say, why is it really my job to do this? Isn't that the lawyer's job? Let me tell you this, though. If you wait for the lawyer to do this, it's often too late. This is about helping your client pick the right property for them. So this is the kind of research which is really easy to do. And I'll show you about that in a second, how to do that in a second. But this is about making sure that before the bid goes in, you've helped your client select the right property, not just based on square footage and number of rooms, bathrooms, and all the rest of it, but also on the usability of the land for their particular needs. And so here's what happens if you miss it. If you miss an easement on the buying side, and this happens so often, and I got to tell you, there's no reason for it. If you miss an easement, if you don't catch it, here's what can happen. You and your client ends up in a situation where they do purchase a property, they move in, and all of a sudden, the very thing that they wanted to do with the land, or one of the things that they thought they would be able to do, all of a sudden they can't. And that turns into a disaster for them or an inconvenience for them. But either way, the blowback on you can be severe. And we all know in these days of social media and the viral spread of bad news, we know that, if one of your clients gets online and has something good to say about you, 10 people will see it. But if they want to get online and really start going after you, 1,000 people are going to see it. And we all know how important reputation is in this referral business that we're in. So one of the best ways that you can protect your client on the buying side is do the easement research and make sure that you don't have a situation where their use of land is going to be compromised. So what about if one is missed on the listing side? So what if you're on the buying side and you discover an easement through your research that the listing agent didn't post? Well, we see that as an opportunity. Quite often, this turns into an opportunity. And again, I know you're on both sides, from one time to another, but understand this. If you're researching a property and no easement has been declared on the listing side anywhere, and you discover that there is an easement that affects the land, we've seen situations where on the buying side, this becomes an opportunity. This is after the agreement of purchase and sale has been signed, but before the deal has closed, this is an opportunity to go back and say, whoa, hang on a second, this is material in nature. We want a reduction in price. We want to renegotiate price. We've also seen in some cases where the nature of the easement is so impactful negatively, has such a negative impact on the client's use of land, that it is considered something that is that qualifies in some cases for clients pulling out of a deal. So remember that on the buying side. Easements are, first of all, make sure that you do your easement research to ensure that your client gets the intended use of land, but also do the easement research. Even if the listing agent and the listing says there are none, do it anyway, because it doesn't mean that there isn't one, right? We've all worked with agents on the other side, well, for whom we do a lot of the work for, right? And so it's so important to make sure that we actually find out what those easements are so we can help our clients through these particular situations. Let's quickly switch. We're running out of time here. Let's quickly switch over to easements on the listing side. I'm just going to scroll my notes up here a second. Give me a second, okay? Scroll my notes up. Here we go. Okay, easements on the listing side now. So you're the listing agent. Why is it important to disclose, to investigate and disclose easements? I can't tell you how many agents I've spoken to who've said, I don't need to do this. Really? Easements? That's the lawyer's job. Oh my goodness. Guys, in this day and age, you've got to know this stuff. You've got to be able to disclose this stuff and understand this stuff. This is about, I know the 300 people we have online, the reason you're here today is because you are top professionals in this industry. You are working on building longevity and resilience into your career, and you really value this accountability and this professionalism that you hold. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, but boy, do we ever get frustrated when we hear, why do I need this? I don't need this. I just list and I sell. Wow. This is why you need it on the listing side. So first and foremost, it's all about protecting the deal. And it's all about protecting your client from the deal before it closes, and also then after the deal, protecting your client from trailing liability. Trailing liability is basically a lawsuit that's waiting to happen, that happens after the fact, when you and your client think it's all done, it's all over, you moved on to your next deal, and wow, your client has moved on to think that, wow, they've got their wonderful house and their wonderful home and their dream home. All of a sudden, something comes back to haunt everyone. So you're protecting the deal, and you're protecting also your client from trailing liability. But what actually happens? So if one is missed and you catch it, you can say it's an opportunity to save the deal. I would suggest to you that you need to be doing this research as part of putting together the listing, research the listings. How many of you just take the information from the previous time this property was listed, from the last listing? None of you, right? Please, I want to see 300 no nevers coming through. You never do that, right? You always assume that the previous listing was somehow incorrect or has changed. Christina, we'll get to you in a sec. Yes, where can we find this information? We're coming to it. We're coming to it, I promise. If you miss it on the listing and the property goes ahead and closes, this could be inconvenient. It could be disastrous. And what we want to help you understand is you want to avoid things like title insurance claims. We want you to avoid things like your client selling their house, a property that has an easement, that hasn't been disclosed, and then the buyer finds out that there's an easement after the fact, can't do whatever it is they wanted to do, whether it's build an addition or a pool or whatever, and then feels like in some way that they were misled, and hires a really good lawyer and comes back on your client to say, hey, you misrepresented this. We want some sort of compensation or fix to this. You're going to get dragged into that as the listing agent. And look, don't do it. Don't get sucked into those situations just because you're trying to get through a deal quickly. And again, next what we're going to do is show you exactly how you go about getting that information. But whether you are on the listing side or the buying side, please do your easement research. Find out if there are easements on the property. Don't try, if you're on the buying side, don't trust what the listing agent is telling you. Do your own research for your client. And on the listing side, don't trust what your seller is telling you, and don't trust a previous listing. Do your research, protect your career, protect your integrity. So last piece here, how do you know if there is an easement on a property? Now, I know most of you already know this, bear with me. It's in the legal description, right? So most easements, not every single one, there are exceptions to this, but most easements that you're going to care about should be in the legal description. And the legal description, in the legal description, what you're looking for is two letterings, two pairs of letters. The first one is ST, and the other one is TW. So as you scan the legal description from left to right, it's going to start off with the locational component of the property. Lot 35 on plan 65M 12345. That's nothing to do with easements. That's the locational component of the legal description. It's the next piece you're interested in, the middle piece, and that is the encumbrance portion. And in that middle piece, what you're looking for is ST followed by an alphanumeric code, and or TW followed by an alphanumeric code. Now, sometimes it'll say subject to, sometimes it'll say together with. However, you're looking for those two different identifiers there. ST in the legal description means that this property is subject to an easement. TW means that this property is the dominant tenement, has rights over, and as easement rights over another property. So the dominant tenement comes through as TW. It actually means together with. So subject to, together with. Subject to in the legal description is identified as ST, and that means this property has at least one easement against it. TW, together with, means that this property is the dominant tenement on an easement over another property. So look for those. But just doing that is not enough. Just doing that and saying, oh, there's an easement, is simply not enough in today's real estate environment, today's day and age. So what you're looking for is after the ST and after the TW, what you're looking for is the alphanumeric code. It'll say ST, and it might say 127563 or CA45ABC. It can be anything. That piece after the ST or after the TW is called the instrument number. Instruments are legal documents on title at the registry office that explain to you the nature of the easement, the details of what that easement is. So ST CA 15673 means that this property is subject to an easement that is further described in detail in legal instrument CA, whatever it is I just called it. So it's really important to then trace those instruments down, chase them down, get them, and interpret them so you can explain to your client and understand for yourself what the nature of these easements are. So where do you get those? Where do you find those? Well, you've got two options right now. The first is GeoWarehouse. You all, I assume, have access to GeoWarehouse. Emma Baker, yes, I always take you from GeoWarehouse or Parcel Register. There you go. Fantastic. Absolutely. You're ahead of me on this. Come on. You're not allowed to steal the punchlines. Come on. Let's not do this. But you're absolutely right. Yes. Good to hear. GeoWarehouse is your first, one of two places where you can get them. By the way, we are partners with Terranet. We Protect Your Boundaries and the Boundary Wise Academy. We're partners with Terranet and GeoWarehouse. We're looking forward to a pretty substantial announcement pretty soon, but we work very, very closely with them. So GeoWarehouse, you can go in GeoWarehouse, and off the property page, you can purchase the parcel register, and it's the parcel register that has your thumbnail legal description on it. Now, some people say, well, I'll just copy and paste it off or just look at it off the property page. I would suggest to you that you can go one step further. And if you actually purchase that document, it is date and time stamped. So that if a year or 5 years from now, you're up in front of a judge trying to explain and defend why you made certain decisions over this particular easement that you found in the legal description, you can say, here's the date and time stamp PDF I have of it that supports me. Because sometimes easements change. Often legal descriptions change and easements change. So purchase the parcel register, get it, because that gives you undeniable proof that on that particular day, you made decisions based on this. So you get the parcel register, and on the parcel register is the legal description. And that legal description tells you right in there if there are STs and TWs. Now, in the parcel register further down, you will have further explanations potentially. But again, it's not enough just to stop there. In that legal description now, you're going to see the instruments. Now on GeoWarehouse, again, you can go and purchase those instruments. Now, some of those instruments are going to be transfers that have the easement described. Sometimes they're going to be reference plans that are basically survey plans that show them. Others are going to be 100-year-old documents written in old medieval English that even I can't understand, that you have to sift through and try and figure out what the heck are people talking about here. So that is one place you can get those documents, but there is another place, and that's with us at Protect Your Boundaries. We have something called easement reports, buyers reports, and sellers reports. And while this is not meant to be a pitch, here's the free part for you. If you want to know if there's an easement on a property, go to protectyourboundaries.ca, go and type the address of the property, and we'll tell you right there and then how many easements we've detected on that property. Simple as that. It's free, and we'll tell you there's 1, there's 3, there's 5, there's 0. We'll tell you right there and then. If you want to dig in further, again, we work closely with GeoWarehouse and Terranet. What we produce is these things called easement reports, or buyers reports, or sellers reports. All three. The essence of these is that we go and we purchase those instruments and parcel registers for you, but then we give you a plain English interpretation of the easements that are in there. So you don't have to sit there and scratch your head and go, I don't understand what this means. We actually explain it to you. So those are your two sources. Again, not intended to be a pitch. This is more of a public service announcement to say, hey, there are 2 places you can go and get these things. Okay, got it? Fine. So client every which way till Sunday. So that's the end of the seminar, this webinar. We don't want to go into too much detail. What I do want to do is spend just a couple of minutes telling you that if this was useful to you, come back for the next one. We're actually going to send a survey out to find out from you 5 or 6 different topics, which one you want to have next week, if you want to come and be part of this again. So we're going to send that out to you. If this was really valuable to you and you want to make the most of your downtime, check out the Boundary Wise Academy. Online learning, 10 hours of this kind of education, video-based with quizzes and exams. It's tough. You've got to get 80% to pass the exams, but get this. When you pass, you end up with the Boundary Wise designation. And the Boundary Wise designation is a new professional designation that you can use for Ontario realtors that sets you guys who took the time to come onto this webinar and learn something. It sets you apart in the industry, helps you be more competitive, generate more leads, close more deals, and we support you with hotline support for a year. After that, you can be in a listing presentation showing your wonderful seller's report to your prospective client. There might be an easement issue. We're on the other end of phone and email for you to support you through that. So that's it for pitching. Check it out at boundarywise.ca. And Jessica is telling me, don't forget to let people know about the discount code. We've got a discount code for you. It's normally $350 to take the course. And if you use the discount code BW Series, BWSERIES, you get $50 off that. We're going to send you an email with all of that. But anyway, that's not what this is about. This is about easements, helping you learn some stuff. Now we're going to get to some questions, okay? So bear with me while my eyesight's failing me. Let's see what we've got here. Some questions. Okay. Here, how can we find out what kind of easement is on the property? Well, I think we talked about that. I think that question came in before we talked about that. You follow the instrument. You get your parcel registered. You find out if it's an ST or TW, and you take that instrument number and you dig into it, or you just come to Protect Your Boundaries. You go to Protect Your Boundaries and get the easement report, buyer's report, seller report for that. That's how you do that. It's so important, regardless of how you do it, it's so important that you dig all the way down to bottom on this, to the actual instrument. Okay? So that's the first question. Cliff Spicer says, are easements only on land, or is it possible for it to be on a physical building? Cliff, thanks. Great question. Of course it can be on a building. We didn't talk about condos here today, but imagine you've got condos. Oh, the easements. Now, our parent company is Kirchmar Surveyors, and they do a ton of condominium work out there, and they spend an inordinate amount of time helping the developer put together this really complex, like Lego building of easements and right-of-ways and who gets access to what, when, why, and how. So yes, the answer is yes, it can be over buildings as well, not just physical land itself. Stephen Mullen says, does title insurance provide relief for a negative easement issue? Oh, I'm not going to get into that one, Steve. My goodness, that's a dangerous one. Listen, title insurance is a fantastic product. It's on a case-by-case basis. That's something you would have to deal with them. I don't know that there is a definitive answer to that on that one. But, you know, title insurance is a phenomenal product. It covers all kinds of great things. But listen, here's the other thing to consider. Title insurance doesn't cover everything. And so what you don't want to be in a position in is where you've gone ahead and said, oh, title insurance is going to cover everything. I don't need to look into this stuff. And for your client only to find that title insurance won't give you relief on this issue that you have. You're stuck. Okay, so better to use it as an advantage and pull that value forward in the deal on the buying side to help your client make a better, more informed decision up front. You'll be a hero. Fantastic. Let's see what else. Mr. Patel says, you mentioned the listing agent that we recommend the listing agent to disclose. Do you know how RICO sees this? No. We work with agents and brokers every day. We are a land survey firm. We work with some of the best survey firms. We work with GeoWarehouse and Terranet. We know that in this particular environment, as professionals looking to protect your reputation and your clients' deals, disclosing, especially in this environment that we're in, maybe not right now in the next few weeks, this environment, the property is going to sell. The more you disclose, the safer you are, the less there is hanging out there as a potential threat to your deal. This is what this is about. I'm not sure how RICO sees it, but I certainly know that with the new provincial legislation that came down about a month ago, that the spotlight is on you as a realtor to be more professional and increase the level of credentials that you have behind you and increase the level of professionalism and accountability in your deal. This is a great way to do that. I would suggest that you work on it on a brokerage by brokerage level and discuss with your managing broker or the owner of the franchise what the policy is internally, and encourage them to make easement disclosure a standard part of everything you do if you don't already. Okay, a couple more. Let's see. Howard Alexandria says, how and why would the description change? I'm assuming you mean the legal description. Well, sometimes easements get added. Sometimes easements get removed. Sometimes the nature of the land gets changed. Sometimes a client gets a charge against them. Maybe an easement hasn't, maybe they haven't paid their HST or their child support, and finally a court order goes through that says there's going to be a charge put against this person's property. So that kind of thing often gets added to the legal description. So it's really important to get the most current one so that you're not dealing with old information. Okay, one last one. What are temporary easements? This is from Emma Baker. Okay, why are temporary easements to allow builders access onto development sites not always removed from the parcel register? Oh, Emma, what a great question. Thank you. That's fantastic. Here's the frustration that we have. You know, we'll look at a legal description, and sometimes we'll see an easement on there, and we'll go, "Oh my goodness, there's an easement on this property." We'll go to the trouble of investigating it, pulling the parcel register, interpreting it, only to find out that it's expired. Well, this is the nature of an easement. This is something I should have covered earlier on. So those of you who've stayed with us, hear this: easements stay on title in perpetuity. They stay on title forever, unless they are either removed or expire. Now, an expiring easement is something that's very common in new subdivisions and new buildings, where the developer needs access to places for the purpose of building and constructing and finishing the development that they're not going to need afterwards. So typically what you'll see an easement that says this type of easement for this use for a period of 5 years or up until this date, whichever comes first. And so that expires. But here's the rub. Sometimes that easement is not removed from the document itself. It's no longer active, but it's still on the document. Nothing we can do about that. It just means that a lawyer hasn't taken the time, hasn't been paid to go and take it off. So they sit there still. So again, use it as an opportunity. Your client's saying, "Oh my goodness, there's an easement on this property." You're like, "Listen, I've done the investigation. It's expired. We're good." Good value, right? Okay, guys. That's going to be it. We've gone over time a bit. I hope it was valuable to you. And reply to the survey. Any questions that you have, let us know. And hopefully we'll see you around this time next week. Thank you, everyone. Have a great, safe, and productive, positive week. Bye, everyone.